Hey there, everyone. This is just a quick video. I just want to talk about why it's important to study the Greco-Roman context of the New Testament. One of the things that you find is references to the culture at the time when these writers were writing. And it's helpful to know what they're referring to. So let's take Acts, for instance. So we know that Luke is writing Acts and he's addressing it to his friend Theophilus. Theophilus is a Greek name, so he's certainly part of that culture. Now in Acts 17, Paul comes to Athens. And in Athens, uh, he goes to the Areopagus, right? And it says in verse 18 that there's some Epicurean and Stoic philosophers that are talking with him. And some of them are saying, what does this babbler wish to say? And some people are interested. So just remember this Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. There's a reason that Luke is telling us these are the people there. And just stick a pin in that for a second. We can circle back. Okay, now, so Paul goes to the Areopagus and he preaches there. And he notes that he saw this inscription to the unknown God. And he's saying, what therefore you worship is unknown, I proclaim this to you. That the God who made the world and everything in it, being the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined the allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being, even as some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. Okay, so this is important to note. So in verse 26, when Paul is saying that this God they don't know, the one true God we know to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the triune God that we worship as Christians, that God made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth. Now, this second part of the sentence of this verse, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that's important to remember. So this is the allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. Why might that be important to Epicureans and Stoics? Well, just briefly, Epicureans reject determinism. They don't think that anything's determined. There's no fate. You have free will to do as you like. Stoic philosophers are the opposite. Everything is determined. They have other differences. But this is an important one that relates to verse 26. Paul is saying, yeah, there is determinism. God has determined the allotted periods and the boundaries of the dwelling place of all people. The period of your life is determined by God. That you even exist is determined by God. It's not a surprise to him that you're here. And when you die, it's not a surprise to him. So that's why we're 2 weeks out now from the attempted assassination of Donald Trump here in 2024. And uh, the thing about that is the bullet didn't kill him. God already determined the length of Donald Trump's life. Obviously, it must extend beyond that moment in July this month because God already decided how long Donald Trump's life is going to be, and it's not going to be limited by that assassin's bullet. So yes, he's sovereign over the bullets. Okay, so that's interesting, right? Now, it's not only that. It's not only that he's saying that some of what these Stoic philosophers believe is true. Also, if we look at um, this religious culture that Paul is addressing, because he said, "I perceive in every way that you are very religious," because there's lots of objects of their worship here. He's saying that um, these things here, that having determined the allotted periods and the boundaries of your dwelling place, that's something that in their culture the fates do, both in Greek and Roman mythology. That's what their fates do. So the fates are these three goddesses that control the length of your life and um, what good and bad things you'll have in your life and where you even live, right? So Paul is saying those things are true, but it's not these three little ladies that are doing it beyond our reach. It is God himself who is doing that. And another thing for the Epicureans, the Epicureans might say the gods exist, but they don't want to have anything to do with us. They ignore us. They're not interested in us at all. And Paul is saying, no, God, the one God that does exist, he's very interested in you. And so much so that in him we live and move and have our being. This is something that um, their poets said about Zeus. Paul is saying that is true, but it's not true about Zeus because Zeus doesn't exist. That is true about God alone. And by saying that God has done all these things that are attributed to their other false gods, Paul is saying very plainly, your false gods don't even exist. God himself does this, the one true God that there is. And Paul has clearly studied their literature, what their poets, their writers have said. That's how he can interact with them in this culture. That's why it's important for us to study that culture also, so that we can understand some of the things that Paul is saying here and what it means. Another thing, just to throw out there real quick. Let's see if I can find it here. Okay, so it used to be said, like among Romans, Jupiter Optimus Maximus, that Jupiter is the greatest, the best and greatest, right? Well, what Christians ended up doing is saying, well, this is partially true, but it's not about Jupiter. It's about, whoops, helps if I spell right. It's about God. Deus Optimus Maximus, meaning the one true God is best and greatest. And it's not Jupiter because he doesn't exist. And one thing that the Romans celebrated was the idea of an empire without end, which is what this says, empire without end. This is in the Aeneid, which I said in another video. This was a cultural touchstone for Romans, and it would have been known all over the Roman world. Um, so imperium sine fine, empire without end, sometimes translated empire without limit. That's actually a good thing to want. That's what Romans hoped that their empire would be. That's a good thing to want, but it's not achieved by man's efforts. The truth is, in Christo, imperium sine fine est. In Christ is empire without limit. My Latin might be a little bit lousy, but you kind of get the idea. Only in Christ is empire without limit, because Christ's kingdom has no end. Of his kingdom there shall be no end, right? So there are some little nuggets of truth that the Greeks and Romans had, but they didn't have it all. And we can learn some of the things, even in our own culture today, some things that have like kind of like a shadow of truth in order to engage with the culture, people in this culture. Uh, you know how superhero movies are really popular. We could take ideas from those and um, engage with fans of those movies and like, oh well, here's what's really true, you know, about God, the one true God who made everything. So I just wanted to go through that real quick and just explain why it is important to study these things. I'm going to link down in the description. There's going to be a link to the Literary Life podcast, and it's going to be an episode where they discuss why it is important to read these pagan myths and understand them. They're going to talk about this more. They'll talk about C.S. Lewis and how the means that God used to reach him. And I think you'll find it interesting. All right, that's all I really wanted to say. Hope you all have a great day.